Welcome to a new Sleep Dive episode. This time we're learning thinking fast. Close your eyes and let's begin. Imagine yourself sinking into a comfortable chair, the world around you fading away. With each breath you take, allow your muscles to relax a little more.
As you focus on your breath, you might notice your thoughts slowing down, becoming gentler, like clouds drifting across a vast open sky.
With each exhale, feel a sense of calm spreading through you, washing away any tension or stress. You're entering a state of deep relaxation, where your mind is open and receptive to new ideas.
And as you relax more deeply, your brainwaves are starting to shift, slowing down from those busy beta waves to the calmer alpha waves, and eventually to those deeply restorative delta waves, the ones associated with that profound, dreamless sleep where learning and memory consolidation can truly flourish.
Imagine yourself descending a staircase, each step taking you further into that state of tranquility. And as you reach the bottom of those stairs, you enter a vibrant, familiar world, the world of London.
We're going to embark on a journey, a mental tour along the famous London Big Bus Tours route. But this is no ordinary tour. We're going to transform this familiar route into a memory palace, an ancient technique for enhancing memory and recall.
Okay, a memory palace in London. I'm intrigued.
Think of it as a mental map, a landscape where you can store information in a way that's both organized and easily accessible. We're going to create 50 distinct locations or loci along this bus route, each one a memorable landmark where we'll anchor key concepts from thinking fast.
50 loci. That's a lot of mental stops.
It might sound daunting, but you'll be surprised how quickly these locations become familiar, like revisiting old friends. And remember, each of these loci can have multiple sub-loci. Think of it like having multiple shelves within each room of your mental mansion.
Okay, so we're on this bus tour making mental stops at these iconic London landmarks, each with its own set of shelves to hold these concepts from thinking fast. What's the key to making this work?
The key is to always move forward along the route. No backtracking. It's like creating a narrative flow, a continuous journey through your memory palace. This linear progression makes it easier to recall the information later on. And to keep things organized, we'll number each loci.
Got it. No backtracking. Always moving forward. And each stop has a number. Where are we starting?
Our journey begins at Buckingham Palace, Loci 1. As you approach the palace gates, imagine two characters standing there engaged in a hilarious, almost slapstick routine.
Okay, I'm picturing them now. What do they look like?
One is dressed in a bright, colorful, impulsive costume, constantly fidgeting full of restless energy. This is System 1, the fast, intuitive, emotional part of your mind. Think of it as the voice of your gut feelings, those snap judgments and quick impressions.
Okay, I can see him vividly. All bright colors and quick movements, like he can't stand still for a moment. What about the other character?
The other character is dressed in a more formal, almost professorial outfit, with spectacles perched on his nose and a book tucked under his arm. This is System 2, the slower, more deliberate, analytical part of your mind. Think of it as the voice of reason, the one that weighs evidence, considers consequences, and makes those carefully calculated decisions.
Interesting. So System 1 is all instinct and emotion, while System 2 is more logic and reason. I can see how those two could clash sometimes.
Exactly. And imagine these two characters interacting in front of Buckingham Palace. Maybe System 1 is trying to rush ahead impatient to get on with the tour, while System 2 is carefully consulting a map, double-checking the route and making sure everything is in order. It's a humorous visual, and it perfectly captures the dynamic interplay between these two systems that are constantly at work in our minds.
Okay, I've got that image firmly planted at Buckingham Palace, Loci 1. Two characters, two systems of thinking, always interacting, sometimes clashing, always shaping how we see the world. Where to next?
Next, we're moving on to Trafalgar Square, Loci 2. Imagine yourself standing in the middle of the square, but it's completely empty. No pigeons, no tourists, no fountains. Just a wide open space bathed in sunlight. It feels effortless, calm, easy.
And there, feels peaceful and serene.
That feeling, that sense of ease and flow is called cognitive ease. It's what our minds experience when things are familiar, predictable, and easily processed. But now imagine something appearing in the middle of that empty square.
What is it?
A giant Rubik's Cube, all jumbled up and impossible to solve. It represents those mental roadblocks, those moments when our thinking gets strained, when we encounter information that's unfamiliar, complex, or contradictory.
Yes, I can see that. The contrast is striking. From that effortless emptiness to this challenging, brain-twisting puzzle.
And that contrast highlights an important insight. When things feel easy to process, we tend to believe them more readily, even if they're not actually true. But when we encounter that cognitive strain, that mental friction, we become more vigilant, more likely to question things, to dig deeper.
Okay, so that Rubik's Cube in Trafalgar Square Loci 2 is a reminder to be wary when things feel too easy, too good to be true. Our brains might be tricking us.
Exactly. Now our journey continues. Hold on tight as our bus navigates the busy streets of London, heading towards our next destination.
Where are we going?
We're approaching Westminster Bridge, Loci 3, where we'll get a close-up view of the iconic Houses of Parliament. And as we cross the bridge, imagine a giant anchor splashing into the Thames, creating a massive wave that nearly washes away the entire building.
Wow, that's a powerful image. I can practically feel the spray from that wave.
That image represents the anchoring effect, one of the most influential forces in how we make judgments and decisions.
The anchoring effect, that rings a bell.
It's about how our minds can be swayed by seemingly irrelevant information, like that giant anchor, a random piece of information, like the initial price of a house or a number spun on a wheel, can create a powerful anchor that pulls our judgments towards it, even if we consciously try to resist.
So it's like that anchor is setting the baseline, creating a reference point that influences all our subsequent judgments, even when we know it's not rational.
Precisely. And remember that image of the crashing anchor creating that massive wave is sitting right there at the Houses of Parliament, Loci 3, reminding you of the power of anchoring.
Okay, 3 loci down, and I'm starting to see how this memory palace works. It's like turning abstract concepts into a visual adventure.
Exactly. Now relax back into your chair as our bus continues its journey. We're heading towards a truly unique landmark.
Where are we going?
We're approaching the London Eye Loci 4, that giant Ferris wheel with its panoramic views of the city. But instead of enjoying the scenery, imagine yourself trapped inside one of those capsules surrounded by screens.
Screens? What are they showing?
Each screen is displaying the same issue or problem, but framed in completely different ways. One screen might highlight the positive aspects of a decision, while another focuses on the negative. One screen might use emotional language, while another presents cold, hard facts.
So I'm trapped in this capsule, bombarded by these competing perspectives, feeling pulled in different directions, unable to choose.
Exactly. It's a visceral way to experience the power of framing effects. How the way information is presented can dramatically influence our choices, even if the underlying facts remain the same.
Okay, so that image of the multi-screen capsule at the London Eye Loci 4 is a reminder to be critically aware of how information is presented, to try to see past the framing to the underlying facts, and to not be swayed by those persuasive techniques.
Exactly. Now relax as our bus continues its journey heading towards one of the most historic landmarks in London.
Where are we going?
We're approaching the Tower of London Loci 5, home to the crown jewels and centuries of history. Imagine yourself inside the tower, surrounded by all those glittering diamonds and precious gems, but suddenly the ground opens up beneath you and you're in freefall, plummeting towards a bottomless pit.
Yikes. That definitely evokes a sense of panic and the fear of losing something precious.
And that feeling, that visceral dread, is at the heart of loss aversion.
Loss aversion. That's the idea that the pain of a loss is more powerful than the pleasure of an equivalent gain, right?
Exactly. And that fear of loss can distort our judgment, leading us to cling to things we already have, even if it's not in our best interest to do so, and to make irrational choices to avoid those potential losses.
So it's like that feeling of falling into the abyss is a stronger motivator than the desire to acquire even more jewels. We're wired to avoid loss, even if it means sacrificing potential gains.
Exactly. And remember that feeling of freefall, that sense of impending loss. As you stand at the Tower of London, Loci 5, it's a visceral reminder of the power of loss aversion. Now take a deep breath, relax, and allow our bus to transport you to our next destination.
Where are we headed?
We're approaching St. Paul's Cathedral, Loci 6, a place of grandeur and serenity. Imagine yourself stepping inside the cathedral expecting to be greeted by hushed reverence. But instead, you're met with a cacophony of sounds.
A cacophony of sounds. What am I hearing?
Sirens blaring, news reports screaming, people shouting, a constant barrage of alarming and sensationalized information echoing through the vast space of the cathedral.
Wow, that's a stark contrast to the peaceful atmosphere I was expecting.
That cacophony represents the availability heuristic, how our minds tend to judge the likelihood of events based on how easily we can recall similar examples.
So it's like those vivid, sensationalized news reports, even if they represent rare events, are dominating my thinking, making me overestimate the likelihood of those events actually happening.
Precisely. And remember that image of the noisy cathedral, that cacophony of readily available information is sitting right there at St. Paul's, Loci 6, reminding you to be wary of those mental shortcuts, to dig deeper and to not let those readily available examples skew your judgment.
Okay, 6 loci down, and I'm finding that the more outlandish and emotionally charged these images are, the easier they are to recall.
Exactly. Our minds are wired to remember those vivid, emotionally salient experiences. Now relax and let our bus carry you across the iconic Tower Bridge.
Tower Bridge, we're going back across the Thames.
Yes, we're heading back to the North Bank, to Tower Bridge Loci 7. And as we cross the bridge, imagine it beginning to open up, those two bascules rising to let a tall ship pass through. But instead of simply opening, the bridge begins to twist and turn, those two halves transforming into a giant, intricate puzzle that's impossible to solve.
So the bridge, which usually represents connection and understanding, is literally breaking apart, becoming something confusing and incomprehensible.
Exactly. It's a visual representation of the illusion of understanding, that tendency we all have to believe we know more than we actually do. We crave those neat, simple explanations, those toddy narratives that make sense of the world, even when those explanations are based on incomplete information or even outright falsehoods.
So it's like we're trying to force together those puzzle pieces, creating a coherent picture even when those pieces don't fit, even when the picture is incomplete.
Precisely. And that illusion of understanding can lead us to overconfidence, to making decisions based on flawed assumptions, and to clinging to those beliefs even when the evidence contradicts them. Remember that image of the twisting, turning Tower Bridge, loci 7, as a reminder to be humble about the limits of your own knowledge, to be open to new information, and to be willing to admit when you don't know something.
Okay, 7 loci down, and I'm starting to see how these seemingly simple images can hold such profound insights.
The mind is a powerful instrument, and the memory palace is a way to harness that power to make those connections between the concrete and the abstract, the physical and the mental. Now relax as our bus continues its journey, taking us to a place where stories come to life.
Where are we going?
We're approaching Shakespeare's Globe Theatre, loci 8. That iconic wooden structure where Shakespeare's plays were first performed. Imagine yourself stepping inside the theater, but instead of a Shakespearean drama, they're performing a wildly exaggerated, over-the-top melodrama.
Melodrama. What kind of play is it?
It's a story full of improbable twists and turns, characters behaving in ways that defy logic and reason, and dialogue that drips with sentimentality and hyperbole. The actors are chewing the scenery, the costumes are ludicrous, the plot is utterly ridiculous.
So it's a play that's so overdramatic and absurd that it's clearly not a realistic portrayal of life.
Exactly. But here's the twist. The audience is completely captivated. They're laughing, they're crying, they're gasping in shock, they're completely buying into this fantastical version of reality.
So it's a reminder that even though we know intellectually that stories aren't always true, that they can be embellished and exaggerated, we're still susceptible to their allure, to the emotional power of a good narrative.
Precisely. And that's the essence of the narrative fallacy, how our minds crave those compelling stories, how we seek out those neat, tidy explanations, even when those explanations are based on limited information or might even be completely false.
Okay, so that image of the over-the-top melodrama at the Globe Theatre, loci 8, is a reminder to be critical of those narratives we encounter, to question their underlying assumptions, to look for evidence that supports or contradicts the story, and to be willing to embrace complexity and nuance even when it's less satisfying than a simple, compelling story.
Exactly. Now relax as our bus continues its journey, taking us to a place where our senses are bombarded with sights, sounds, and smells.
Where are we going?
We're approaching the bustling borough market, loci 9. A feast for the senses. Imagine yourself walking through the market, surrounded by stalls overflowing with fresh produce, aromatic spices, freshly baked bread, and all sorts of culinary delights. But this is no ordinary market.
What's different about it?
As you walk through the market, notice how each stall is subtly priming you for a certain action or thought.
Priming? What do you mean?
It's about how our thoughts and actions can be influenced by subtle cues that we might not even be consciously aware of. For example, as you pass a bakery, the aroma of freshly baked bread wafts through the air, triggering a sudden craving for a croissant even though you weren't hungry before. Or you walk past a flower stall and the scent of roses fills your nostrils, evoking feelings of romance and a desire to buy a bouquet even though you hadn't planned to.
So it's like the market is a giant priming experiment, with all those sensory stimuli working their magic on our subconscious minds.
Exactly. And by placing that image of the subliminal borough market at loci 9, you'll have a reminder to be more aware of those subtle influences that might be shaping your thoughts and actions.
Okay, 9 loci down, and we're really starting to delve into the subtle and often unconscious forces that shape our thinking.
Our minds are constantly processing information, making connections, and responding to cues both internal and external. The more aware we are of these processes, the more control we have over our own thoughts, emotions, and decisions. Now relax as our bus takes us to a place where we can explore the world of art and perception.
Where are we going?
We're approaching the iconic Tate Modern loci 10, home to some of the most challenging and thought-provoking modern art. Imagine yourself stepping inside the museum, but instead of the usual abstract paintings and sculptures, you're surrounded by distorted mirrors.
Distorted mirrors, what do they look like?
Each mirror reflects a different cognitive bias. Those systematic errors in thinking that can lead us to make irrational judgments and decisions. For example, one mirror might make you look taller, representing the halo effect where we tend to see positive qualities in people we already admire. Another mirror might make you look thinner, representing the confirmation bias where we selectively seek out information that confirms our existing beliefs.
So it's like a funhouse of cognitive distortions. Each mirror reflecting a different way our minds can trick us.
Exactly. And by placing that image of the distorted mirror gallery at the Tate Modern loci 10, you'll have a visual reminder to be on the lookout for those cognitive biases that might be lurking in your own thinking.
Okay, 10 loci down. This memory palace is really starting to feel like a mental gym. where I'm exercising my cognitive muscles and strengthening my ability to think clearly.
Exactly. The more you practice, the stronger those mental muscles become. Now relax as our bus continues its journey, taking us to a landmark that represents both ambition and the limits of human control.
Where are we going?
We're approaching the Millennium Dome Los 11, that massive futuristic structure that once housed a grand exhibition celebrating the dawn of a new millennium. Imagine yourself stepping inside the dome, and in the center there's a giant control panel filled with flashing lights, buttons, and levers.
A control panel, what does it control?
It's designed to control every aspect of the dome. The lighting, the temperature, the sound, the exhibits, everything. But as you step closer to the control panel, you realize something's wrong.
What is it?
No matter what you do, no matter which buttons you press or levers you pull, nothing happens. The dome is on autopilot, following its pre-programmed course, and you have no real control over its operation. You're surrounded by all these symbols of control, but you're utterly powerless to influence the outcome.
So it's a reminder that even though we crave control, even though we like to believe we're in charge, there are many aspects of life that are beyond our influence.
Precisely. And that feeling of powerlessness, that realization that we're not always in the driver's seat, is at the heart of the illusion of control.
The illusion of control, that's about how we often overestimate our ability to influence events, even when those events are largely determined by chance or external factors, right?
Exactly. And by placing that image of the powerless control panel at the Millennium Dome Los 11, you'll have a visual prompt to be more realistic about your own sphere of influence and to accept the things you can't change.
Okay, 11 loci down. And I'm starting to feel like I'm developing a more balanced perspective on my own ability to control events.
It's about recognizing the interplay between agency and acceptance, knowing when to exert effort and when to let go. Now relax as our bus navigates the busy London streets, taking us to a place synonymous with advertising and sensory overload.
Where are we going?
We're approaching Piccadilly Circus. Loci 12. A whirlwind of flashing lights, giant billboards, and bustling crowds. But imagine this. All those dazzling billboards are suddenly blank, except for a single phrase in bold letters, WYSITA.
WYSIAT. What does that stand for?
It stands for What You See Is All There Is.
What you see is all there is.
That sounds a bit ominous.
It's one of the core principles of thinking fast, and it describes our tendency to make judgments and decisions based on the limited information that's readily available to us, often ignoring the bigger picture or potential alternative explanations.
So it's like we're constructing our reality tunnel based on the information we happen to have at hand, often neglecting the wider context or the possibility that we might be missing crucial pieces of the puzzle. Exactly, and that limited perspective can lead us to make hasty judgments, to jump to conclusions, and to miss opportunities.
So that image of those blank billboards at Piccadilly Circus with that stark message, WYSIAT, is a reminder to be aware of the limitations of my own perspective, to seek out more information, to challenge my assumptions, and to remember that there's always more to the story than what I might initially see.
Precisely. Now relax as our bus heads north, taking us to a treasure trove of history and culture.
Where are we going?
We're approaching the historic British Museum Loci 13, home to artifacts from across the globe and throughout history. Imagine yourself wandering through the museum's vast galleries, and you come across an exhibit that's bathed in an ethereal glow.
An ethereal glow? What's causing it?
There's a giant luminous halo hanging above one exhibit, making it seem more impressive and significant than all the others, even though objectively they might be equally important.
So it's like that halo is distorting my perception, making me favor that one exhibit simply because it's been highlighted, even though it might not deserve special attention.
Exactly, and that's the essence of the halo effect. How our overall impression of someone or something can be influenced by a single positive trait. It's like that one glowing quality casts a halo over everything else, making it hard to see things objectively.
Okay, so that glowing halo at the British Museum, Loci 13, is a reminder to be critical of those first impressions, to try to see past the halo.
Right.
And to evaluate things more holistically.
Precisely. Now relax as our bus travels west, taking us to a neighborhood famous for its colorful houses and vibrant street life.
Where are we going?
We're approaching Notting Hill Loci 14, and as we drive through the colorful streets, imagine yourself coming across a house that's under renovation. But this is no ordinary renovation.
What's different about it?
It's been under renovation for years. Scaffolding is everywhere, tools are scattered about, the paint is peeling, and the workers seem to be moving at a glacial pace. It's a project stuck in perpetual limbo, a monument to our tendency to underestimate the complexity of tasks and the time required to complete them.
So it's a visual representation of the planning fallacy.
Exactly. The planning fallacy is that all too human tendency to be overly optimistic about our own plans, to focus on the best case scenario, and to fail to account for unexpected delays and setbacks.
Okay, so that eternally unfinished renovation in Notting Hill Loci 14 is a reminder to be more realistic about my own planning, to build in some buffer time, to be flexible and adaptable, and to not let those inevitable disruptions ruin my day.
Precisely. Now relax as our bus takes us back east, to a place where we can explore the world of deduction and the pitfalls of biased thinking.
Where are we going?
We're approaching the Sherlock Holmes Museum on Baker Street, Loci 15, a tribute to the world's most famous detective. Imagine yourself stepping inside the museum, and instead of the usual displays of pipes and magnifying glasses, you see a wall covered in evidence boards. But these aren't the evidence boards of a brilliant detective.
What's different about them?
Each board is filled with only the clues that support a predetermined theory, ignoring any conflicting information. It's like Sherlock Holmes has abandoned his objective logical approach, and is instead cherry-picking evidence to fit his narrative.
So it's a visual representation of the confirmation bias.
Exactly. The confirmation bias is that powerful tendency we all have to favor information that confirms our existing beliefs. While ignoring or downplaying evidence that contradicts our views, it's like we're all amateur detectives selectively gathering clues to support our predetermined conclusions.
Okay, so those biased evidence boards at the Sherlock Holmes Museum, Loci 15, are a reminder to be more critical of my own information gathering, to be more open to alternative perspectives, and to be willing to change my mind when the evidence demands it.
Precisely. Now relax as our bus takes us to a place where we can explore the world of buying and selling, and the psychological traps that can lead to irrational decisions.
Where are we going?
We're approaching the bustling Camden Market, Loci 16, a labyrinth of stalls selling everything from vintage clothing to handmade crafts to exotic street food. Imagine yourself wandering through the market, and you come across a stall selling vintage clothing.
A vintage clothing stall. What's so special about it?
The clothes are all moth-eaten, rip-stained, and hopelessly out of style. They're practically worthless. But the seller is adamant that these are valuable treasures and is trying to convince you to buy them at outrageous prices.
Okay, so it's like the seller is delusional, completely out of touch with reality.
Not necessarily. They might be a victim of the sunk cost fallacy. That tendency we all have to cling to decisions or investments even when they're clearly not working out, because we've already invested so much time, money, or effort.
So it's like they're so fixated on the sunk costs, the time and effort they've put into acquiring these clothes, that they can't see their actual value. They're trapped in the past, blinded by those sunk costs.
Exactly. And by placing that image of the worthless vintage clothing stall in Camden Market, Loci 16, you'll have a visual prompt to be more aware of the sunk cost fallacy in your own life.
Okay, 16 Loci down. I'm starting to see how this memory palace is not just about memorizing facts. It's about developing a deeper understanding of human behavior, of our own minds, and of the forces that shape our thoughts, emotions, and decisions.
Exactly. It's about becoming more aware, more mindful, and ultimately more in control of our own destinies. Now relax as our bus continues its journey, taking us to a place of elegance and history.
Where are we going?
We're approaching Kensington Palace, Loci 17, home to royalty and steeped in tradition. Imagine yourself walking through the elegant gardens of the palace, and you come across a group of people dressed impeccably in tailored suits, carrying briefcases and talking on their phones. They look every bit the part of successful business executives.
Okay, I'm picturing them now. What are they doing?
They're talking, they're networking, they're discussing important business deals, they seem serious, focus-driven, but suddenly...
But suddenly what?
They break into a perfectly synchronized Bollywood dance routine.
What? Bollywood dance?
Exactly. It's a complete surprise, a juxtaposition that challenges your expectations.
So it's a reminder that appearances can be deceiving.
Yeah.
That we shouldn't judge people based on superficial impressions.
Precisely. It's a visual representation of the representativeness heuristic. How our minds tend to judge the probability of something belonging to a certain category, based on how well it matches our stereotype of that category.
So it's like our brains are playing a matching game, trying to fit people and events into those pre-existing categories, even when those categories might not be accurate or complete.
Exactly. And by placing that image of those Bollywood dancing executives in Kensington Palace, Loci 17, you'll have a visual prompt to be more aware of the representativeness heuristic, to be more critical of those snap judgments you make, and to remember that there's often more to people and situations than meets the eye.
Okay, 17 loci down, and I'm starting to feel like I'm developing a mental X-ray vision, able to see past those superficial impressions to the underlying reality.
It's about developing a more nuanced and sophisticated understanding of the world, recognizing the complexity and the diversity of human experience. Now relax as our bus takes us to a place where music and memories intertwine.
Where are we going?
We're approaching the majestic Royal Albert Hall, Loci 18, a world-renowned concert hall that's hosted some of the most legendary musical performances in history. Imagine yourself sitting in the audience listening to a symphony orchestra performing a masterpiece. The music builds to a crescendo, a truly breathtaking moment of sonic intensity, a peak experience that sends shivers down your spine. But
I
then
know what happens.
the conductor gets so caught up in the music, so lost in the emotion of the moment, that he trips over his baton and falls headfirst into the timpani drum.
Oh no, what a disaster.
The concert ends in chaos and embarrassment. The audience is stunned. The musicians are mortified. And even though the concert was mostly beautiful and moving, that final embarrassing moment will likely dominate your memory of the entire experience.
So it's a reminder that our memories aren't always accurate or objective, that they can be skewed by those peak moments, those moments of intense emotion, whether positive or negative.
Exactly. And that's the essence of the peak end rule. How our memories of experiences are disproportionately influenced by the most intense moment and the final moment, often neglecting the duration or the overall quality of the experience.
So it's a reminder to be mindful of how I create and shape my own experiences, to focus on those peak and end moments, and to not let those few negative moments taint the entire memory. To remember that life, like music, is a symphony, a blend of highs and lows, and it's the overall composition that matters most.
Precisely. And with that image of the conductor's unfortunate fall at the Royal Albert Hall Loci 18, you'll have a visual prompt to be more aware of the peak end rule and to be more mindful of how you create and shape your own experiences.
Okay, 18 Locis down, and I'm starting to feel like I'm developing a more nuanced and balanced understanding of memory and how it shapes our perceptions of the past.
Memory is a powerful force, but it's also a fallible one. By understanding how it works, we can become more conscious creators of our own memories, shaping those experiences that will bring us joy and meaning for years to come. Now relax as our bus takes us to a place where we can explore the power of words and how they can subtly shape our perceptions.
Where are we going?
We're approaching the vibrant and diverse Brick Lane Market Loci 19. Imagine yourself walking through the market and you come across two food stalls side by side, both selling the exact same curry.
The same curry. What's different about them?
One stall is advertising its curry as 90% fat-free, while the other stall boasts only 10% fat.
So even though it's the same curry, the way
But let's describe the words used to frame it are influencing my perception.
That's the power of framing effects, even though the curry is objectively the same. The 90% fat-free framing makes it seem healthier and more appealing. Our minds are drawn to those positive framings, even when the underlying reality is identical. Okay, so those dueling curry stalls at Brick Lane Market Loci 19 are a reminder to pay attention to how information is presented, to be aware of those framing effects, and to try to see past the words to the underlying reality.
Precisely. Now relax as our bus takes us to a place where we can explore the seductive allure of certainty and the pitfalls of believing too easily.
Where are we going?
We're approaching the serene and beautiful Regent's Park Loci 20. Imagine yourself enjoying a peaceful picnic in the park, surrounded by lush greenery and the gentle sounds of nature, but suddenly your tranquility is interrupted by a group of fortune tellers who descend upon you.
Fortune tellers, what are they doing?
They're eager to read your palms, gaze into your crystal balls, and offer predictions about your future, your love life, your career, everything, but their predictions are vague, contradictory, and completely unsubstantiated. They're playing on your hopes and fears, offering those easy answers and those comforting certainties, even though they have no real basis in reality.
So it's like those fortune tellers represent those moments when we're seduced by the illusion of validity, when we crave those certainties, even when we know deep down that the future is uncertain and unpredictable.
Exactly. The illusion of validity is that powerful tendency we have to cling to our judgments and predictions, even when they're based on flimsy evidence or gut feelings, because they feel valid to us. We crave that sense of certainty, that feeling of knowing, even when it's based on illusion.
Okay, so those dubious fortune tellers in Regent's Park Loci 20 are a reminder to be more skeptical of those judgments, predictions, even my own, that might be based more on feeling than fact.
Exactly. Now let our bus transport you to a place where we can explore the darker side of human perception, that tendency to focus on the negative.
Where are we headed?
We're approaching Highgate Cemetery Loci 21, a sprawling Victorian cemetery known for its grand mausoleums, overgrown pathways, and somewhat eerie atmosphere. Imagine yourself wandering through the cemetery, taking in the beauty of the ancient stonework and the tranquility of the surroundings.
Okay, I'm there. It's a peaceful place, but I can sense a bit of melancholy in the air.
Even though the cemetery is beautiful and historic, your attention is drawn to the most decrepit and neglected graves. You notice the cracked headstones, the faded inscriptions, the overgrown weeds, those symbols of decay and decline.
Yes, I see them now. It's like those few negative elements are overshadowing the beauty and serenity of the cemetery.
That's the negativity bias at work. Our brains tend to focus more on negative information than positive, giving those negative experiences and emotions a stronger gravitational pull on our attention. It's like one bad review can outweigh a dozen good ones.
So it's a reminder to consciously counter that negativity bias, to seek out the positive, and to not let those few negative experiences dominate my thinking. To remember that every life, every story has its share of light and shadow, and it's up to us to choose which aspects we focus on.
Exactly, and with that image of those neglected graves in Highgate Cemetery Loci 21, You'll have a visual prompt to be more mindful of the negativity bias and to cultivate a more balanced and nuanced perspective. Now relax as our bus takes you to a place where music and emotions intertwine.
Where are we going?
We're approaching Abbey Road Studios, Loso 22, that legendary recording studio, where countless iconic albums have been made. Imagine yourself inside the studio, but instead of the usual recording equipment, there's a giant mood ring in the center of the room.
A mood ring. What's that doing there?
And as the mood ring changes color, reflecting different emotions, the sound of the music being played also changes when the mood ring is blue, signaling a calm and peaceful mood. The music sounds beautiful and harmonious, but when the mood ring turns red, signaling anger or frustration, the same music suddenly sounds discordant and unpleasant.
So it's like my emotions are acting as a filter shaping my perception of the music, even though the notes being played are objectively the same.
Exactly, that's the essence of the effect heuristic. How our emotions can color our judgments and decisions even when we think we're being objective. It's like our feelings are acting as a mental shortcut, influencing our evaluations, even when those feelings aren't logically connected.
Okay, so that mood ring controlled music at Abbey Road Studios Loci 22 is a reminder to be aware of how my emotions might be influencing my judgments, to be more mindful of those subtle emotional influences, and to try to separate those feelings from my objective evaluations.
Precisely. Now relax as our bus travels west, taking us to a place where we can explore the subtle art of persuasion and the psychological tactics that can influence our buying decisions.
Where are we going?
We're approaching the bustling Portobello Road Market Loci 23, a treasure trove of antiques, vintage clothing, and unique finds. Imagine yourself walking through the market and you come across a stall selling antiques.
An antique stall? What kind of antiques are they selling?
The stall is filled with dusty old furniture, faded paintings, chipped china, and all sorts of curious objects from the past. And as you browse through the items, the seller points to a particularly unremarkable teapot.
A teapot. What's so special about it?
It's a plain brown teapot, nothing fancy or ornate. But the seller leans in and whispers this teapot is at least 500 years old. And even though you have no real knowledge of antiques, that initial number sticks in your mind.
500 years old. That's impressive.
And you find yourself valuing the teapot much higher than you would have otherwise.
So that initial number, that 500 years old, has acted as an anchor, influencing my perception of the teapot's value, even though I know that number might be completely arbitrary.
Exactly. That's the power of anchoring bias, how our judgments can be swayed by seemingly irrelevant information, like an initial price or a random number. Those anchors create a mental reference point, a starting point for our evaluations, and we tend to adjust our judgments from there, even when we know those anchors might be misleading.
Okay, so that overpriced antique teapot at Portobello Road Market, Loci 23, is a reminder to be wary of those anchoring attempts, to be more critical of those initial pieces of information that might be skewing my judgment, and to try to assess things based on their own merits, not those arbitrary anchors.
Precisely. Now relax as our bus takes us back east to a place that embodies the spirit of individuality and self-expression.
Where are we going?
We're approaching Carnaby Street, Loci 24, a pedestrianized shopping street, famous for its eclectic mix of boutiques, independent stores, and street performers. Imagine yourself walking down Carnaby Street, taking in the vibrant atmosphere and the creative energy of the crowds, and you come across a street performer doing a magic trick.
A magic trick? What kind of trick is it?
He's tossing coins and asking you to predict whether they'll land heads or tails, and even though you know it's a 50-50 chance, you can't shake the feeling that you can somehow control the outcome.
So I'm feeling like I can influence the outcome, even though I know rationally that it's just chance.
Exactly. You're caught in the grip of the illusion of control, that tendency we have to overestimate our ability to influence events, even when those events are largely determined by chance or external factors. It's like we have this innate desire to believe that we're in the driver's seat, even when we're just passengers along for the ride.
So that coin-tossing magician on Carnaby Street, Loci 24, is a reminder to be more realistic about my own sphere of influence and to accept the things I can't change, to focus on what I can control, my own actions and choices, and to let go of that illusion of control when it comes to external events.
Exactly. Now, relax as our bus takes us to a place where we can explore the power of vivid imagery and how it can shape our perceptions of risk and probability.
Where are we going?
We're approaching the bustling Covent Garden Market, Loci 25, a vibrant mix of street performers, craft stalls, and historical architecture. Imagine yourself standing in the crowded piazza, taking in the sights and sounds of the market, and you notice a street performer setting up for a particularly daring act.
Yeah, a daring act. What is it?
He's juggling chainsaws. It's a thrilling and dangerous act, and as you watch, you can't help but feel a sense of anxiety, a fear that something might go wrong.
Chainsaws, that's terrifying.
And those fears are amplified by all the news reports you've seen about chainsaw accidents, those vivid images of injuries and close calls.
So even though I know statistically that chainsaw accidents are relatively rare, those readily available mental images are making me overestimate the risk.
Exactly. That's the availability heuristic at work, how we tend to judge the likelihood of events based on how easily we can recall similar examples, and those readily available mental images, often fueled by media sensationalism, can create a cognitive echo chamber, amplifying our fears and distorting our judgment.
Okay, so that chainsaw juggling street performer at Covent Garden Market Loci 25 is a reminder to be aware of the availability heuristic, to be more critical of those readily available mental images that might be skewing my judgment, and to remember that our fears don't always reflect the actual probabilities.
Precisely now relax as our bus takes us to a place where we can explore the perils of hindsight and the illusion of knowing what we couldn't have known.
Where are we going?
We're approaching the Churchill War Rooms, Loci 26, that underground complex where Winston Churchill and his team directed the British war effort during World War II. Imagine yourself stepping inside the dimly lit war rooms, surrounded by maps, charts, and historical artifacts.
Okay, there feels like stepping back in time into a pivotal moment in history.
And on the wall, there's a giant chalkboard. But instead of strategic plans, it's filled with predictions about the war, but all the predictions are written after the events actually happen.
So it's like someone's gone back in time and rewritten history to make it look like they knew the outcome all along.
Exactly. It's a perfect representation of hindsight bias, that tendency we all have to look back on events and think we knew they were going to happen all along. It's like we're rewriting history to make ourselves look more prescient, more knowledgeable than we actually were.
So it's a reminder to be more humble about my own ability to predict the future, to acknowledge that the past is always clearer than the present, and to avoid those I knew it all along moments that can inflate our sense of certainty and blind us to the complexities of decision-making.
Precisely now relax as our bus takes us back to a place where we can explore the power of optimism and the potential pitfalls of believing too easily in a happy ending.
Where are we going?
We're approaching the vibrant South Bank Centre Loci 27, a cultural hub on the banks of the Thames, home to theaters, galleries, festivals, and a constant buzz of activity. Imagine yourself standing on the South Bank overlooking the river, and you notice a giant game of roulette being played.
A roulette wheel. What's so special about it?
This roulette wheel is a bit unusual. It's rigged so that it only lands on lucky numbers. Everyone who plays wins.
So it's a game where everyone's a winner that's not very realistic.
Exactly. It's a distorted version of reality where everyone wins and there are no losers.
Yeah.
It represents that optimistic bubble we often live in, where we downplay risks and overestimate our chances of success.
So it's like that rigged roulette wheel is a reminder to temper my optimism with a dose of realism, to acknowledge potential risks, and to not let those overly positive expectations blind me to potential pitfalls. To remember that life, like roulette, is a game of chance, and that while optimism is a valuable asset, it's important to balance it with a healthy dose of pragmatism.
Exactly. Now, relax as our bus takes us to a place where we can explore the power of ownership and how it can inflate our perception of value.
Where are we going?
We're approaching the elegant and historic Hampton Court Palace Loci 28, a magnificent Tudor palace with grand gardens and a rich history. Imagine yourself walking through the palace's opulent halls, admiring the priceless antiques and the exquisite works of art. But as you try to get a closer look, you're constantly being shooed away by possessive guards.
Possessive guards? What are they guarding?
They're fiercely protective of every object, every painting, every piece of furniture, refusing to let anyone touch them or even get too close. It's like they've imbued those objects with an almost sacred significance.
So it's like those guards represent that emotional attachment we develop to things we own, that sense of ownership that makes us overvalue them, even when those things might be objectively no different from things we don't own.
Exactly. That's the essence of the endowment effect, how we tend to value things we own more highly than things we don't, even if those things are objectively identical. It's like that sense of ownership creates an emotional bond, an invisible tether that inflates the value we place in our possessions.
Okay, so those possessive guards at Hampton Court Palace Loci 28 are a reminder to be more objective when assessing the value of my own possessions, to be willing to part with things that no longer serve me, and to not let that sense of ownership inflate the prices I'm willing to pay, or accept to remember that true value is often subjective, and that letting go can be liberating.
Precisely now relax as our bus takes us to a place where we can explore the complex psychology of negotiation and the subtle forces that can influence our bargaining strategies.
Where are we going?
We're approaching the vibrant and multicultural neighborhood of Brixton Loci 29, known for its lively markets, diverse community, and vibrant street art. Imagine yourself wandering through Brixton Market, and you're trying to haggle with a street vendor over the price of a souvenir.
Okay, I'm picturing the scene now. It's a bustling market full of energy and color. What kind of souvenir am I trying to buy?
It's a beautiful, hand-painted ceramic tile depicting a colorful scene of Brixton life. You're determined to get a good deal, so you offer a price that you consider fair, but the vendor is incredibly stubborn and refuses to budge on the price, even though, you could get a better deal elsewhere.
So the vendor's playing hardball, trying to get the highest price possible.
Yes, but it might be more than just that. They might be a victim of loss aversion, that deeply ingrained tendency we have to feel the pain of a loss more intensely than the pleasure of an equivalent gain.
So it's like they're so focused on avoiding a potential loss, even a small one, that they're willing to sacrifice a potential gain, a sale, just to avoid that feeling of loss.
Exactly, and that loss aversion can be powerful. It can make us cling to things we should let go of, and it can make us miss out on opportunities.
Okay, so that stubborn street vendor in Brixton Market Low C29 is a reminder to be aware of loss aversion, both in myself and in others, and to remember that sometimes it's better to let go, to cut my losses, and to move on to better opportunities.
Precisely. Now relax as our bus takes us to a place where we can explore the art of memory and how to create experiences that will leave a lasting positive impression.
Where are we going?
We're approaching the serene and beautiful Kew Gardens Low C30, a sprawling botanical garden with stunning glass houses, exotic plants, and tranquil pathways. Imagine yourself strolling through the gardens, enjoying the fresh air and the vibrant colors of the flowers.
Okay, I'm there. It's such a peaceful and rejuvenating place.
You spend hours wandering through the gardens, taking in the beauty and diversity of the plant life, feeling your stress melt away as you connect with nature.
It sounds like a perfect day.
But as you approach the exit, you're distracted by a beautiful butterfly flitting nearby, and you accidentally step on a hidden sprinkler, getting soaked from head to toe.
Oh no, what a way to end the day.
And even though you spent hours enjoying the gardens, that final unpleasant moment will likely overshadow the entire experience in your memory.
So it's like that sprinkler mishap has tainted the entire day, even though it was mostly a positive experience.
That's the peak end rule at work. Our memories of experiences are disproportionately influenced by the most intense moment, and the final moment often neglecting the duration or overall quality of the experience.
So it's a reminder to be mindful of how I create and shape my own experiences, to focus on those peak and end moments, and to try to create positive endings that will leave a lasting good impression. To remember that it's not just about the content of the experience, but also about the framing, the beginning and the end that shape our memories.
Exactly, and with that image of the microphone mishap at Kew Gardens Low C41, you'll have a visual prompt to be more aware of the peak end rule, to be more mindful of how you shape your own experiences, and to remember that those endings can have a disproportionate impact on our memories.
Okay, 41 loci down this memory palace is really becoming a mental treasure trove of insights into human behavior, a map of those cognitive biases and mental shortcuts that shape our perceptions and our choices.
And with each loci, you're strengthening those neural connections, making those insights more accessible, more readily available when you need them now. Relax as our bus takes us to a place where we can explore the power of fear, the allure of security, and how those emotions can influence our decision-making, sometimes leading us to miss out on opportunities.
Yeah, where are we going?
We're returning to the vibrant and eclectic Brixton Market, but this time it's loci 42. Imagine yourself back in that bustling market surrounded by those colorful stalls, the lively crowds, the enticing aromas of street food, and you're browsing through a stall selling vintage records.
Okay, I'm there. I love browsing through old records, those vinyl treasures from the past.
And you find a rare album that you've been searching for, an album by your favorite artist in pristine condition, a true collector's item, and the price is incredibly reasonable, a steal for a record in such good condition.
So I found a treasure. It was a great deal. I'd be thrilled.
But as you reach for your wallet, you hesitate. You start to think about all the other things you could buy with that money, those practical purchases, those bills that need to be paid, those future expenses that are looming on the horizon, and you worried that you might regret spending the money on this record, that it's an extravagance, a luxury you can't afford.
So I'm letting those fears and doubts creep in, even though I know it's a great deal and I might never find this record again.
Exactly. That's loss aversion at work. That tendency we have to feel the pain of a loss more intensely than the pleasure of an equivalent gain. And that fear of that potential loss, even though it's hypothetical, can outweigh the potential gain of owning that rare record.
So it's a reminder that I need to challenge those fears, to remember that sometimes taking a risk making that investment can lead to greater rewards in the long run. That sometimes the fear of loss can prevent me from experiencing joy and pursuing those things that I truly value.
Precisely. And with that image of that missed record buying opportunity at Brixton Market Loci 42, you'll have a visual prompt to be more mindful of loss aversion, to be more courageous in your choices, and to remember that sometimes the greatest losses are the opportunities we fail to seize.
Okay, 42 loci down, and I'm feeling more and more like I'm developing mental courage, a willingness to embrace risk and to not let those fears hold me back.
It's about finding that balance between prudence and boldness, between managing risk and pursuing opportunity. Now relax as our bus takes us to a place where we can explore the power of storytelling, the allure of narrative, and how our minds can be seduced by those compelling tales, even when those tales might not be entirely true.
Where are we going?
We're returning to Shakespeare's Globe Theatre, but this time it's Loci 43. Imagine yourself back in that iconic wooden theater, sitting amongst the audience, eager to witness a performance.
Okay, I can feel the anticipation, the excitement of being in that historical space, waiting for the play to begin.
And as the curtains rise, you see that the stage is set for a historical play, a grand epic, depicting a pivotal moment in British history. The costumes are elaborate, the actors are delivering those Shakespearean lines with passion and conviction, and the story is unfolding with dramatic intensity.
Okay, I'm engrossed in the story transported back in time.
But as you watch the play, you start to notice some inconsistencies, some historical inaccuracies, some embellishments, some dramatic liberties that the playwright has taken to make the story more compelling, more entertaining.
So the play is sacrificing historical accuracy for dramatic effect.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Even though you know intellectually that the play is not entirely accurate, that it's a fictionalized version of events, you find yourself swept away by the emotional power of the story.
So it's like my desire for a good story, for that narrative coherence, is overriding my critical faculties.
Precisely. It's a perfect illustration of the narrative fallacy, that tendency we have to create those compelling narratives to explain events, even when those narratives are based on limited information, or might even be completely false. We crave stories that provide a sense of meaning, order, and coherence, even when those stories oversimplify reality.
Okay, so that historically inaccurate play at the Globe Theatre Low C43 is a reminder to be more critical of those narratives, to question their underlying assumptions, to look for evidence that supports or contradicts the story, and to be willing to embrace complexity and nuance even when it's less satisfying than a simple, compelling tale.
Exactly. Now relax as our bus takes us to a place where we can explore the challenges of planning, the allure of optimism, and how our minds can trick us into believing that our plans will unfold flawlessly even when experience tells us otherwise.
Where are we going?
We're returning to the vibrant and eclectic Notting Hill, but this time it's Loci 44, and it's the day of the famous Notting Hill Carnival, a riot of color music and cultural celebration.
Okay, I can hear the music, the steel drums, the reggae beats, the sounds of celebration filling the streets.
Imagine yourself caught up in the excitement of the carnival, surrounded by those colorful costumes, those elaborate floats, those dancing crowds. You've meticulously planned your day. You've mapped out the parade route. You've made a list of the food stalls you want to try. You've even coordinated outfits with your friends.
It sounds like a perfect plan.
But as the day unfolds, your plans start to unravel.
What goes wrong?
The parade is delayed, the crowds are overwhelming, you lose track of your friends, the food stalls have long lines, the weather turns unpredictable, those carefully laid plans start to crumble under the weight of reality, the chaos and spontaneity of the carnival.
So it's a reminder that even the best laid plans can go awry, that unexpected events can disrupt our carefully crafted schedules, and that sometimes the best approach is to embrace the unexpected, to go with the flow, and to enjoy the ride, even when it veers off course.
Exactly. It's a perfect illustration of the planning fallacy, that tendency we have to underestimate how long it will take to complete tasks and projects, often focusing on the best-case scenario and failing to account for those unexpected delays and setbacks. We're seduced by that illusion of control, believing that we can predict and manage every detail, when in reality, life is full of surprises.
Okay, so those derailed carnival plans at Notting Hill Loci 44 are a reminder to be more realistic about my planning, to build in some buffer time, to be flexible and adaptable, and to not let those inevitable disruptions ruin my day.
Precisely. Now relax as our bus takes us to a place where we can explore the power of belief, the allure of certainty, and how those preconceived notions can blind us to alternative perspectives, even when the evidence contradicts our views.
Where are we going?
We're returning to the Sherlock Holmes Museum on Baker Street, but this time it's Loci 45. Imagine yourself back in that Victorian-era setting, surrounded by those relics of the world's most famous detective, and you're browsing through a collection of Sherlock Holmes stories, eager to immerse yourself in those tales of deduction and mystery.
Okay, I can see those leather-bound volumes, those yellowed pages, those classic stories that have captivated readers for generations.
But as you start to read, you realize that something is amiss. The stories have been rewritten.
Rewritten? How have they been changed?
Sherlock Holmes is always wrong. He misinterprets the clues, he jumps to false conclusions, he overlooks crucial evidence, and he consistently fails to solve the mysteries.
Wow, that's a strange twist. Why would anyone rewrite those stories to make Sherlock Holmes look incompetent?
It's a jarring and unsettling experience because it violates our expectations, it challenges our preconceived notions about Sherlock Holmes. We're so accustomed to seeing him as a brilliant and infallible detective that we might resist or dismiss those instances where he makes mistakes or where his reasoning is flawed.
So it's like those rewritten stories are highlighting our own confirmation bias, that tendency we have to favor information that confirms our existing beliefs and to ignore or downplaying evidence that contradicts our views.
Exactly. It's a reminder to be more critical of our own beliefs, to be open to alternative perspectives, and to be willing to challenge our own assumptions, even when it's uncomfortable, to remember that even the most brilliant minds can be wrong, and that being open to new information is essential for growth and understanding.
Okay, so that image of the fallible Sherlock Holmes at the Sherlock Holmes Museum, Loci 45, is a powerful reminder to be more open-minded, to be willing to question my own beliefs, and to remember that there's always more, to learn more, to discover more, to understand.
Precisely. Now, relax as our bus takes us to a place where we can explore the seductive power of personalization, the allure of tailored experiences, and how those customized realities can create echo chambers of information that reinforce our existing beliefs and preferences.
Where are we going?
We're returning to the vibrant and dazzling Piccadilly Circus, but this time it's Loci 46. Imagine yourself standing in the heart of Piccadilly Circus, surrounded by those giant billboards, those flashing lights, those dynamic displays that bombard your senses with information and advertising.
Okay, it's a sensory overload, a whirlwind of images and messages.
But this time the advertisements are different. Instead of those generic messages targeting a mass audience, all the billboards are promoting products and services that are tailored to your specific interests, your hobbies, your fears, your desires.
So it's like the entire environment is personalized, customized to appeal to me and my preferences.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of how technology and data analysis can be used to create those echo chambers of information that reinforce our existing beliefs and preferences by surrounding ourselves with information that confirms our views. It can be tempting to believe that our perspective is the only valid one, that everyone else sees the world the same way we do.
So it's a reminder to be mindful of the information I consume, to seek out diverse perspectives, to challenge my own assumptions, and to be open to the possibility that my understanding of the world might be incomplete or even inaccurate.
Precisely. And by placing that image of the personalized Piccadilly Circus at Loci 46, you'll have a visual prompt to be more aware of those echo chambers, to be more critical of those tailored realities, and to be more proactive in seeking out a wider range of perspectives, to step outside that personalized bubble, and to embrace the richness and diversity of human experience.
Okay, 46 loci down this memory palace is truly remarkable. It's like we've taken a mental tour of London, and with each stop, we've uncovered a new layer of understanding, a new insight into the workings of our minds.
It's been an incredible journey, hasn't it? And with each loci, those connections in your mind are growing stronger, making those insights more accessible, more readily available when you need them.
Gratitude.
Our next stop takes us back to the historic British Museum, but this time it's Loci 47. And as we enter those grand halls, imagine yourself standing in one of those vast galleries surrounded by artifacts from across the globe and throughout history. And you're listening to a tour guide share fascinating stories about those ancient objects.
Okay, I can hear the tour guide's voice weaving tales of emperors and pharaohs, of lost civilizations and ancient mysteries.
But as you listen more closely, you realize that the tour guide is focusing on a particular historical figure. A king, a queen, a general, a philosopher, and their portrayal is decidedly one-sided.
One-sided? What do you mean?
The tour guide is emphasizing only the positive aspects of this person's life, their accomplishments, their virtues, their heroic deeds. They're glossing over their flaws, their mistakes, their less admirable qualities. It's a glowing portrayal, a sanitized version of history designed to create a heroic narrative.
So it's like the tour guide is putting a halo over this historical figure, making them seem more perfect and admirable than they really were.
Exactly, and it's a perfect illustration of the halo effect, how our overall impression of someone can be influenced by a single positive trait. Or in this case, a series of positive traits highlighted and emphasized by the tour guide. It's like that one glowing quality, or in this case, a collection of glowing qualities, casts a halo over everything else, making it difficult to see the person objectively, to acknowledge both their strengths and their weaknesses.
So it's a reminder to be more critical of those glowing portrayals, to seek out a more balanced perspective, to acknowledge both the good and the bad, and to remember that even the most admired figures are human with their share of strengths and weaknesses.
Precisely. Now relax as our bus takes us to a place where we can explore the allure of optimism, the power of belief, and how those positive expectations can sometimes blind us to the realities of risk and probability.
Where are we going?
We're returning to the vibrant South Bank Center, but this time it's Loci 48. Imagine yourself back in that cultural hub, surrounded by theaters, galleries, street performers, and a constant buzz of creative energy, and you come across a stage where a talent show is taking place.
Okay, I can see the stage, the lights, the expectant audience.
And as you watch the performers, singers, dancers, comedians, musicians, you're struck by their talent, their passion, their energy. Each performer is unique. Each act is entertaining. Each story is inspiring.
It sounds like a showcase of amazing talent.
And as you watch, you can't help but feel a surge of optimism, a belief that each of these performers is destined for stardom, that they're all going to make it big.
So I'm getting caught up in the excitement, the belief that all these dreams are going to come true.
Exactly. And it's a perfect representation of the optimism bias, that tendency we have to overestimate the likelihood of good things happening to us and to underestimate the chances of bad things. We're drawn to those success stories, those narratives of triumph over adversity. And it's tempting to believe that we too are destined for greatness, that our own paths will be paved with good fortune. But reality is often more complex, more challenging, more unpredictable.
So it's a reminder to temper that optimism with a dose of realism, to acknowledge the challenges and obstacles that lie ahead, and to be prepared for setbacks along the way, to remember that success, often requires not just talent and ambition, but also hard work, persistence, resilience, and often a bit of luck.
Exactly, and by placing that image of those overly optimistic talent show auditions at the South Bank Center Losi 48, you'll have a visual prompt to be more aware of the optimism bias, to be more balanced in your expectations, and to be more resilient in the face of setbacks, to remember that the journey is just as important as the destination, and that even when our plans go awry, we can still find joy and fulfillment along the way.
Okay, 48 Luce down, and I'm feeling more and more like I'm developing a healthy balance between optimism and realism, between pursuing my dreams and accepting the realities of life's unpredictable journey.
It's about finding that sweet spot between hope and pragmatism, between embracing possibilities and acknowledging limitations. Now relax as our bus takes us to a place where we can explore the psychology of ownership, the emotional attachments we form to our possessions, and how those feelings can distort our perceptions of value.
Where are we going?
We're returning to the elegant and historic Hampton Court Palace, but this time it's Loci 49. And instead of exploring the palace's grand halls and opulent chambers, imagine yourself attending a grand auction taking place in the palace gardens.
Okay, I can hear the auctioneer's voice, that rapid-fire patters, those enticing descriptions of the items up for bid. What kind of auction is it?
But this auction is a bit unusual. Instead of bidding on items that don't belong to them, the participants are being asked to bid on items they already own.
Items they already own? That's strange. Why would anyone bid on something they already have?
And to everyone's surprise, the bids are sky high. People are willing to pay exorbitant prices for things they already possess, even though they could easily replace those items for a fraction of the cost.
So it's like that sense of ownership, that familiarity, that emotional attachment is inflating their perception of the value of those items.
Exactly. It's a perfect illustration of the endowment effect, how we tend to value things we own more highly than things we don't, even if those things are objectively identical. It's like that feeling of ownership creates a psychological bond that makes us reluctant to part with those possessions, even when it's irrational.
So those inflated auction bids at Hampton Court Palace, Losi 49, are a reminder to be more aware of the endowment effect, to be more objective in assessing the value of my own possessions, and to be willing to let go of things that no longer serve me, even if they hold sentimental value.
Precisely now, for our final stop on this mental tour of London, we return to where our journey began, to a place that symbolizes tradition, authority, and the complex interplay between our intuitive and our deliberative minds.
We're back at Buckingham Palace.
Yes, we've come full circle back to Buckingham Palace, but this time it's Loci 50. And as we stand before those grand gates, imagine those two characters we met at the beginning of our journey, System 1 and System 2, those embodiments of our fast intuitive thinking and our slower, deliberate reasoning.
Okay, I remember this. System 1, the impulsive one, always eager to jump into action, and System 2, the more cautious and thoughtful one, always taking its time to weigh the options.
And this time those two characters aren't clashing or competing. They're standing side by side, holding hands, taking a bow, acknowledging their interdependence, their essential roles in shaping our thoughts, emotions, and decisions.
So it's a reminder that both systems are important, that our intuition and our reason, our emotions and our logic work together to guide us through the complexities of life.
Precisely, and with that final image firmly implanted at Buckingham Palace Loci 50, we've completed our journey through the memory palace of thinking fast and slow.
Wow, what an incredible journey. I feel like I've not just learned about these concepts. I've experienced them, I've internalized them, and I've woven them into the fabric of my memory. I can feel those images, those associations, those insights becoming a part of me.
They will stay with you. I assure you, the more you revisit this memory palace, the stronger those connections will become now as you drift back into wakefulness. Carry those insights with you. Notice those moments when you're jumping to conclusions, making snap judgments, or letting your emotions cloud your thinking. Remember those mental tools we've explored, those anchors, those frames, those halos, those biases. Use them to challenge your assumptions, to seek out more information, to make more rational choices, and to live a more mindful and fulfilling life. Remember that your mind is a powerful instrument, and with practice, you can become a master of your own thoughts, emotions, and decisions.
Thank you for guiding me on this incredible journey. I feel like I've gained a whole new understanding of myself and the world around me.
And that's the beauty of learning, of exploration, of expanding our horizons. The journey doesn't end here, it's just the beginning.